So let's talk a little bit about design build. First, let's talk about sort of its counterpart, the more traditional design bid build. In a design bid build project delivery, the owner has two key contractual relationships. The first one is with the designer. They sign a contract, the designer designs whatever it is all the way through to 100%, so it's ready to build. And then at that point, the owner will put that particular design out to bid or assign it to a contractor to build. And then typically in the public infrastructure, contractors will competitively bid and sort of say how much it's going to cost them to actually build this particular project, and then the lowest bid typically wins. So in that particular instance, the contractor doesn't really have any say in the design. They're just given a design and asked to come up with a bid for how much it's going to cost to build that particular design. And it works well in many instances. Now, back to design build. We're going to talk about design build and unpack it using four basic categories. And we're trying to answer the question, why would you choose a design build project delivery over, say, a very traditional design bid build approach? So the first reason is coordination. So if you have one contract and one entity responsible for the design and the construction, you can have some really good close coordination between the design team and the construction team, so that things are designed so that they're more easily built, and things are built based on the design. And so everything kind of works better together, and you get fewer changes, fewer pieces of rework, and actually a lot less disputes between the engineers, designers, and the contractors. So coordination is a big benefit with design build. Now, if they're two separate contracts, then they both kind of work with the owner, and they don't really have much to say to one another, because design happens and then it's over, and then construction happens. Okay, so the second reason design build might be advantageous is speed. So one of the things you can do when you have one contract with an entity that does the design and the construction is actually you can start construction before the design is complete. How about that? So maybe you might be, say, 60% complete with design, and you may have already done 10% of the construction. So you can kind of compress that schedule down and overlap the design and construction so you can deliver the project more quickly. Now that really matters, because time is money, literally. The longer we wait and the longer it takes to build a project, the more it costs the owner. So speed is often something cited as a reason for using a design build approach. Now, the third thing is control. And this is kind of interesting. So the owner really has to decide what kind of control they want over this particular project. In particular, what kind of control they want over the design and the construction. So the owner, if it chooses more control over the design, then it can specify the design more completely in a design build contract. And that leaves the design builder less leeway to do their own design, and maybe less leeway to come up with some innovation to maybe grab some efficiencies out of design and construction and save the owner some money. So in general, more control is generally slower and probably more costly to the owner. Less control can be quicker and less costly to the owner, because the design builder can then bounce their design off of the construction and really work to maximize value and efficiency along the way. But then it really depends upon, is the owner okay with getting something maybe that they didn't exactly envision at first. Now realize, for design build contracts, it's never really as simple as the owner saying, hey, build me a bridge across Lake Washington, I'll be back in 3 years and see what you did. But what they typically do is specify some amount of design and some amount of detail for what they want built, and leave the rest up to the design builder. And that point where they leave the rest up to the design builder can vary from project to project and industry to industry. Finally, there's risk. So there's always risk in a construction project. Risk that things might cost more than they would otherwise cost. Risk that you might encounter something in the ground or elsewhere that you weren't counting on. Risk that something happens to delay your schedule, like an earthquake or a big weather event or something like that. So there's risk involved. Now typically the owner assumes a fair amount of risk in a design bid build contract. In design build, more of that risk is placed on the contractor because the contractor is in charge of not only the construction, but also the design. So if a design doesn't work, the contractor's at fault. Whereas in design bid build, if a design doesn't work, it's the owner's problem or the designer's problem. So that risk may be spread out a little bit more. So there is more risk in a design bid and a design build contract placed on the builder or the contractor than would be otherwise. Sometimes that's advantageous because it allows them to do some creative things. But just realize, as an owner, it sounds kind of nice to place more risk on the contractor and less on you. Who wants more risk? But remember this one thing when it comes to risk in contracting. Contractors will accept risk, but they will price risk. Contractors price risk. If you give them risk, they will price it for you. So if you give them the risk of doing a particular construction method and it may or may not work, they're okay doing that, but when they put their bid together, they may actually price a second alternate construction method to do in case the first one doesn't work. In other words, that risk that you gave them as an owner or as a contractor, that risk that you accepted from the owner, you put a price tag on, so you're not left high and dry. So remember, when you're thinking about whether you should do a project using a design build method, think about these four things: coordination, speed, control, and risk. And usually you can come up with a fairly decent reason why your project might be a good candidate for design build, or maybe wouldn't be. Thanks.